folks, and welcome to my first video. My name is Dion Tolley, and I'm not a stranger to social media, but I am a stranger to the video aspect of it. I did a lot of posts, as you can see here. I've written a lot of written text, very extensive. Here's, giving you a little idea of the depth of them. I've never did videos, but I've been compelled to do videos recently because of some of the absolute nonsense that have been circulating around the black community and around social media, really corrupting the awakening, which I know from my heart has been from the Most High. But it's really saddening that our people have embraced such ridiculous notions. Well, at any rate, we're going to get into some truths from the scriptures, and we're going to try to reason with some of these folks today, and we're going to go from a few sources, abiding by the standard of, by the mouth of two or three witnesses, let every word be established. So we're going to start with, because that was the purpose, like I said, being compelled to do this video, was to start off, which I hope to be a series of videos, getting into all of the topics and subjects like I do in my written posts. I would like to get into some more detailed videos of our narrative in the same manner. And we're going to start with this one, being that this is probably the most controversial. And we're going to start with this one because everyone, first of all, you have all kind of crazy notions about this prophecy. First of all, being that looking at Christian, predictions and prophecies, automatically we're lined up and counted among those religious assertions and religious, sometimes almost fanatical assertions. We can't be compared because we're not a religion, for one. We're a bloodline. And the narrative of the scriptures is our history of our bloodline. Whether you know it or not, it is. And as time goes on, particularly if you follow my studies, we will have proven that by then. Well, at any rate, that Exodus from Egypt, which is another misnomer, is 430 years, and we'll get into that, and I'll start off with that. As a matter of fact, we'll go to that with my eSword. eSword is my online concordance. This is where I be able to take and translate scriptures back to the original Hebrew that it was written in. As you can see here, each word is written in its original Hebrew, and the sides on that, and you click down on it, and it'll show you on the bottom what it means, where it comes from, the original pronunciation of it, how it was written in Hebrew, and this is the reference number. Well, anyway, get into that prophecy in Abraham. He tells you here that we're going to start with that, and I hate to just delve right into it, but the way I do it in my posts is I just deal with the facts. I've really never been into the fanfare and all of the production aspect of it, and the music and all of that. I'm very simple. I'm really not interested in all of the peripheral. I'm really just interested in the facts. And hopefully a lot of us in these times that we're, at least becoming like-minded and starting to understand that time is short and something is going on in the world. And even though you may not be able to actually understand it and pretty much articulate it into words, you still know in your heart and soul that there's something wrong. And we're going to, bit by bit, put this thing together so where you'll understand the big picture and understand the information as it was intended for us to receive it, not fragmented and split up into all of these different doctrines and notions like Christians do and like other people do, secular studies and academics are. Everything is precision when it comes to the Most High. Every prophecy, every promise, everything is time appointed. So there's no ambiguity when it comes to the scriptures. Well, in any way, starting with this is one of the first scriptures, or one of the first prophecies, that was given to us after the flood. Enoch was written many, but that was before the flood. and he was the first prophet. But afterwards, Abraham was given the first prophecies. And his prophecies was about the days we live in now and the affliction that we're suffering right now. And anyway, he says to Abraham, he says in 13, he says, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come here again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So in other words, he was telling Abraham, or Abram at the time, Abarim, which is a real Hebrew name, and we'll get into that at another date as well, that in the fourth generation he would come back there. And we know that from Jacob's sons. They were there till Jacob's sons. And then Joseph, who was among the 12 sons of Jacob, he was carried into captivity by the Ishmaelites into Egypt. So that's where you get the sojourning and the affliction or the hard labor. And we'll prove that here with Esau. Again, like I said, if you're a person that likes to study for yourself and obtain information for yourself, of all of the different concordances and online concordances out there, this is the best. And 30. So we'll go there and we'll find 30, because it's 430 years. So I just pick one word from the scriptures, and it'll help me find it where it's listed, because it lists every time it's used. So anyway, to the context of our discussion, we're going to go with where is 430 years, and here it goes at the end of Exodus 12. Okay, so now we'll go back to the text and find out it in its original context. He says, now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self-same day that it came to pass, that all of the hosts of Yahweh went from out of the land of Egypt. Okay? So it's 430 years. And he says it was sojourning, whereas the prophecy in Genesis says that it's affliction. And there's a big difference between affliction and sojourning. See? All right? Now, as far as the land is concerned, for all of you, I don't want to insult you, but it's absolute madness when you hear folks talking about, particularly our people talking about we're Native Americans and we're South Americans and we're Indians. And I mean, it's just so shameful and just appalling that we would even think that. After all of the information that's been opened up to us, internet, media, I mean, come on. For us to also result in this type of thinking is just shameful. Well, anyway, that's the results of the slave mentality. And we'll get into that as well in another date. Well, anyway, he tells you, he says here, and it came to pass that when the sun went down, it was dark, and it was a smoking, behold, a smoking furnace, and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. And it says, in that same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham. Very important about that. See, that was a covenant the same way that Yah made a covenant with Moses. He said, and unto thy seed have I given this land. And he says it's from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. And these are the Canaanites in which were driven out of the land. Amorites, and these are all of the Canaanites that were living out of the land. Now, this is what's important about that assertion is, contrary to what most people believe, given the state of modern Israel and how it's just about the size of New Jersey, this geographical distance from the river Egypt to the great river Euphrates is massive. And he's saying that this was the seed that was to accommodate the people who the Most High said would be as the sand of the sea. So there's no way all of the 12 tribes and all of their descendants could have fit in there. So we're going to go and take a look at just the location of that land. Now look at that. So we're going to move up a little bit so you can see. I don't know if my head's there. But This is the river Egypt. This is the Euphrates. So this river here is all of the border between them. Not that little strip of land up in there. All of this land. Are you understanding me? All of this land was their land. Now, I don't know if this seems to be, because there's a big discrepancy in terms of the Jordan. And I always wondered about that, but we'll get into that speculation later. But that is the clarification of the border in which it was given to him and how it could really accommodate a people as massive as the children of Israel when the 400 years, or not the 400 years, after the 430 years were expired and they were carried out of, and the Most High delivered them from Egypt, and they were carried into their land. And as the generation started to grow, and up until the time of David, by that time, and when Jerusalem was established under the kingship of David, they were millions of people by then. And you had 12 tribes, and as you can read in the book of Joshua, where they were all, each tribe was given an allotment of land for them and their children, or that particular tribe. So that needs to be established from the gate. But we're going to go into some witnesses now. Now we're going to go into some witnesses of that particular passage, and we'll go back to it so you read it. This particular passage of, in the fourth generation, the whole prophecy, stranger, the 400-year prophecy. And I'm sorry if I'm skipping over it because my thoughts are kind of colliding. Forgive me. Well, anyway, we're going to go into some of the books where we'll be a witness to that. And this book is going to be the book of Jubilees. Now, the book of Jubilees was written by the angel of the presence. And the angel of the presence was the angel that is described in the book of Exodus, where the Most High told him he would lead him. And that he was the angel that was, he was going to slay Moses when he wasn't circumcised, and his wife, not when he wasn't circumcised, I'm sorry, but when his two sons weren't circumcised. And the angel saw them, and he got the sharp stone and did it to him right on the spot, because the angel, the Most High, told him that he had to follow every instruction, that the angel wouldn't negotiate with him. He judged things that weren't right, and he supported you and did what he had to when things were right, when they were right. Well, at any rate, he says, now this came to pass in the first. He says, now Yahweh calls mountain up to the mountain, and this is where he's giving it to him. And he says, come up to the mountain, I will give you 2 tables of stone on the Torah and on a commandment which I have written, that ye may teach them. And Moshe went up to the mountain. And it says he abode up there at Mount Sinai, and the cloud was over it 6 days. And I'm just kind of skimming down. He was up there 40 days and 40 nights. I'm trying to find where he told him where the angel of the presence. And if you don't want to look for it, there's another good tool here with your PDFs. You will go with the presence. Sorry about that, folks. All right. And he said here, and this would be in what chapter, so you know what the chapter, if you're going to look for it yourself. Chapter 1 still. All right, so let me go back to it. Okay, now he said to the angel of the presence, write for Moses the beginning of creation till my sanctuary has been built among them all for eternity. You hear that? He told the angel of the presence to write this down. Most people don't understand the power and the magnitude of that statement, to where this was dictated to him to Moses, or Moses had these particular scriptures. And Jubilees, by the way, is a measurement of time. You read the book of Leviticus and Numbers, it tells you about the Jubilee year and the 50-year period of 49 weeks of Sabbaths, 7 weeks of Sabbath, and the 49th or the 50th year being the Jubilee year. Well, at any rate, the angel of the presence wrote this down. So just because I don't want to get off on a tangent, I don't want to elaborate on that too much. But we're going to go to where he says, and I'll just pick a word to where I can find it. Let's find surety. That was when he told Abram, he said, know of a surety. All right? Now let's look at this. He said, and he took the middle of the month and he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron, and he built an altar and sacrificed all these. And he poured the blood upon the altar, and he divided them in the midst, and he laid them over against each other. And all the birds that he divided not. And the birds came down upon the pieces, and Abram drove them away. And he did not suffer the birds to touch them. And it came to pass when the sun had set, that ecstasy had fell upon Abram. And lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And it was said to Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and they shall bring them into bondage, and shall afflict them 400 years. And that nation also, to whom they will be in bondage, will I judge. And after they shall come out forth thence with much substance. Same way the other one read. And we'll go back to the other one. We'll skip back to the other one. Says it, also that nation will I serve, will I judge, and afterward will come out with great substance. In the fourth generation they shall come here. Same thing. This is a witness. Remember, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. Same thing, but in the fourth generation they shall return here. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Then he goes back to the same thing, where he says, he made a covenant with Abram. To your seed will I give this land from the river Egypt to the great Euphrates, and the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Ammonites and the Perizzites and all of that. So you understand that? So this is the witness to let you know the importance of who we are, and that this couldn't be disputed in the time it was saying for us to go. And the fact that it's 1619 and it's documented all over the world. If anyone was to check any library or any documentation from any country on the earth, and you were to inquire as to when did the slavery, or when did the first slaves arrive in Jamestown or Jonestown, America, Jonestown. I'm getting them confused because it was really a sick thing like Jonestown with your old boy Jim Jones. Well, at any rate, if you would inquire as to what was the year that the first slaves arrived in colonial America, and it's documented all over the world, 1619, and it's different from the South American slave trade by this fact alone, is that North America and South America were 2 different slave trades. North America and South America one was, in terms of the Portuguese, they did the South American slave trade. The English and the Germans, the Anglo-Saxons, did the North American slave trade. You got to remember, this was at that time, this was a race for the New World, and they were battling for the New World. So the Portuguese and Spain were actually competing against the Americans or the English and the Germans when it came to this slave trade. It was just like they're doing now for the oil. Well, at the same time, this was the reason why this is such a distinction for it. Why? Because this North American colonialism, they would emerge into this great Babylon in which we are today, to which this prophecy is talking about. South America doesn't have that. They're not United States. Each one of those governments are all split up, and they all have different natures of government and how they govern their people. They have different laws, You know, there are different ethnicities in these different nations. Where America is United States. This is all North America. Even though it's broken up into 50 states, this is one nation. And this captivity is completely different. What happened in the slave trade in the South American continent was different than what happened up here. They married their slaves. Those slaves were, they were given land, and, they speak a different language. I mean, it's a completely different narrative than the North American slave trade. Our affliction was horrible, even though theirs were probably no different while it was going on, but it was a different narrative in the way that they didn't do as far as the women. A lot of the men didn't bring their wives over to South America. They would all come over and have a second family over in South America. It's all documented history. Go to the Harvard Library, Princeton Library online, and the things that are available to the public. You can find out all of this. Well, at any rate, that captivity was completely different. And even though that is Judah, because we're in the four corners, we're all over the earth. The children of Ephraim, the 10 tribes, they stayed in the Middle East and Africa. That's another distinction that needs to be made from the beginning. But Judah was scattered all over the earth. But Judah, at the same time, Judah being in Babylon, and being that would be in terms of the vision that Daniel had as the kingdoms, the fourth dreadful kingdom, Babylon is that kingdom. America is that empire. Everything is broken up into worldwide empires. That's why the Messiah came during the Roman Empire. Because that was the only thing in terms of the world being divided. It wasn't fitting for a king to come. And a king, at those days, the king was interchangeable with the word kingdom. And the Most High came as a king in the world, in the world that had established a worldwide kingdom, which would be the way the Most High's kingdom was. Under David, everybody had to pay tribute to the Hebrews, to Jerusalem, where the Most High Spirit dwelled. Everyone on the earth. And you see that in the annals of history when it came to the Kebra Nagast, and when it came to Solomon and King Hiram of Tyre. They sent, merchants and it lists all of the different mariners and seafaring nations that were under Solomon that went across the world to make sure that everyone paid homage to the Most High. So this is established. Well, at any rate, people are confusing also, and we're going to go here to establish that. People are also saying that, what about the fact that maybe in South America and America, those names were changed, that all of those names were American names, and when Esau came over there, which a lot of them are privy to the fact that it is Esau, and I commend them for that, but they come in and they say that, Esau, he changed the name of all of these rivers and all of the locations and the geography of South and North America and made it accommodating to him. Well, that's nonsense. And we're going to go to the book of Yashar. And the book of Yashar, which is another book written by Moses, and I could prove that as well using the book of Exodus, and we will at another date, maybe if we have time later on. Well, at any rate, Moses tells you, even as far as how people assert that Africa was named after Scipio Africanus. In the book of Jasher, which is another book written by Moses, and it tells you here this was referred to in the book of Joshua in 2 Samuel, and they give you is this not written in the book of Yashar? You know what I mean? Is it written in the book of Samuel? So if you would see that if it's written in the book of Joshua, that means Joshua said that. And if this is written in the book of 2 Samuel, you know that David wrote that. Because Daniel is what 2 Samuel is dealing with. And Daniel was, David was explaining to the people in terms of fighting. He was saying that all of these things are described in the book of Jasher, or the book of Yashar, because this was formerly called the Book of Wars, this book. The book of Yashar was formerly called the Book of Wars. They don't call it that. Well, anyway, we're going to find Africa in there. Prove that there was no way that this was named after any Gentile. Okay, now look at this. And it's going to give you another thing, being that Jacob and Esau were twin brothers, and his descendants, remember, two men of people. At first, because we all from that land, let me go back. I messed up a little bit here. Let me go back. And they're all from that land, and it says, and this is Zepho. Let me go back to the other one, the previous one. Now, it says, now the children of Esau sent secretly to Angeas, king of Africa. The same is Dinhaba, saying that send us some of your men and let us come unto us, and we will fight together with the children of Seir the Horite, for they have resolved to fight with us and drive us from the land. Now, the Angeas, king of Dinhaba, did so, for he was in those days friendly to the children of Esau. And Angeas sent 500 valiant infantry to the children of Esau and 800 cavalry. And the children of Seir went unto the children of the east and unto the children of Midian. And if you know anything about the genealogy, Midian was the children of Abraham from his second wife, when Keturah, the Midianites. Well, at any rate, so these were all Shemites fighting against each other at this period, for context. Well, anyway, this proves that this is not named after any Gentile. We go to the next one. And he came to Africa, which is Dinhaba, to Angeas, king of Africa. And this is Zepho, his son. And it says Zepho was the captain of the host of Angeas, king of Africa, for many days. Now, at that time, Africa was all of the land under Egypt. Egypt was primarily all of North Africa, or the top half of Africa, and the southern part of Africa was primarily the Hamites' land. But being that the Hamites had always allowed Esau made it his business to rule over them because of him being from Abraham. Remember, Abraham's children were the children of promise. So all of Abraham's children were to rule the earth. Just the reason why Esau's children rule the earth today. Jacob or Esau, never together. One ruling over the other. That's the prophecy. And that's why it tells you that Jacob is the end, and Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of the world that follows. Okay? Well, at any rate, let's see if there's more dealing with Africa. So this tells you right here, and he came to Africa, which is, okay, that's the same one. Let me go back. And the people of Angeas, king of Africa, saw her and they praised her. This is another way where I wanted to get into where Moses was actually king over Africa. He was king over the Cushites at one time. All right? And we're going to show you that. And I'm going to show you. Okay. All right. Now, here we go. Now, he says, now Moses asked him, wherefore is the labor meted out for you day by day? And when they had told him, he had befallen them all the injunctions which Pharaoh had put upon them before his birth. And they told him all the counsels which Balaam the son of Beor. Well, this may not be where we're looking for, but he tells you that Balaam was afraid of Moses, and he and his two sons rose up and went forth from Egypt and fled and delivered their souls and betook themselves to the land of Cush, to Kikianus, king of Cush. All right. And Moses was in the king's house going out and coming in. And Yahweh gave him favor in the eyes of Pharaoh. Well, now we're going to, so he hasn't gotten up to it yet. Well, we're going to skip down to where Moses becomes king of Cush. Moses flees to Cush. Now it says Moses flees to Cush at the death of the king. Now he said it was in those days that there was a great war between the children of Cush and the children of the east, Aram. You got to remember, these were all Ishmaelites, all children of Abraham. Remember, the Ishmaelites come from Abraham and Hagar. And they rebelled against the king of Cush in those days. whose hands they were, I'm sorry. And Kikianus, king of Cush, went forth with all the children of Cush, and people numerous as the sand. And he went to fight against Aram and the children of East to bring them under subjection. And when Kikianus went out, he left Balaam the magician with his 2 sons. You notice Balaam has always been there to curse us, even up to the Moabites. Well, anyway, let me go back. I moved my place because I got the touch screen here. Well, anyway, hold on. Go back. Now it says, now, and the day arrived when Moses went to Goshen to see his brother, and he saw the children of Israel and their burdens and hard labor, and Moses was grieved on that account. Now, wait a minute, I'm reading from sorry about that, folks. And I'm not going to edit this out because I really don't feel like doing it. But I'm going to go back to where I was. And it says here, we left off with Kikianus and Balaam. And let's skim down. Let's go down. And let's go down to where Moses goes in there. Now it says, at that time, the war and the siege were against Cush, and Moses fled from Egypt from Pharaoh, who sought to kill him for having slain the Egyptian. And Moses was 18 years old when he fled Egypt. So that's a lot of information a lot of people don't know. And he fled from Egypt from Pharaoh, who sought to kill him from having slain the Egyptian. And Moses was 18 years old when he fled Egypt from the presence of Pharaoh, and he fled and escaped to the camp of Kikianus, which at the time was besieging Cush. And Moses was 9 years in the camp of Kikianus, king of Cush. All the time they were besieging Cush, and Moshe went out and came in with him. And the king and princes, all of the fighting men loved Moshe, for he was great and worthy. His stature was like a noble lion. His face was like the sun, and his strength was like that of a lion. And he was counselor to the king. And at the end of 9 years, Kikianus was seized with a mortal disease, and his illness prevailed over him, and he died in the 7th day. And his servants embalmed him and carried him and buried him opposite the city gate to the north of the land of Egypt. And they built over him an elegant, strong, and high building, and they placed great stones below. And the king scribed and engraved upon those stones all the might of their king Kikianus, and with all his battles which he had fought. Behold, they are written there at this day. See, so a lot of stuff that they read now is really dealing with Kikianus, which is pretty heavy. Anyway, it's hard for me to navigate this with my finger, but I'm going to try. Well, anyway, I think I might have skipped up. Sorry about that. You got to remember, folks, this is my first video, so things are going to be a little rough. All right, now I'm just going to find out where it is, and then we're going to move on, folks. All right, that says the reign of Moses. And in 55th year of the reign of the king of Egypt, that is in the 157th year of the Israelites going down to Egypt. So this tells you here, in that 430-year reign that they were in, this was the 157th year that they came down. All right, and that would have meant in the time of Joseph. They would have began that when Joseph came down. Because it tells you it was 212 years of hard labor that they spent. So that would have been when Joseph got there all the way until Moses delivered him. And he says, and Moses was 27 years when he began to reign over Cush. And he was 40 years did he reign. Do you hear that? And you'll see that in the scriptures that when Moses was delivering us from Egypt, he was in his 60s. I think it was when he left, it was 128. So no, I'm sorry, he was in his 80s. He was in his 80s because he was 128. So give you an idea just how full Moshe's life was. You know what I mean? But you can read all about that on your own leisure. And I'm going to tell you, it's a fascinating story. But going back to our original point, that there's no possible way that there could have been any other land that these boundaries in terms of Egypt, Cush, the Euphrates, the Nile. There's just no other way that you can move them. South America, and we'll look at them. And there's nothing fitting that description. Let's look at South America from Google Maps. Let's go to Google Map, and we'll find South America in Google Maps. All right. All right. Let's look at that. Let's find one with some maps on it, with some rivers where we could see some rivers. All right. Now he tells you from the Great Nile to the river. What you tell me anywhere here where any of this fits any of those boundaries? And then everything is moving to the east. So if everything is moving to the east in terms of the scriptures and where we were moving and where the migration of land went from Africa eastward towards Asia and all that, they couldn't have did that here because that would have put them in the ocean. So none of this makes any sense whatsoever, and there is no rivers that flip that. Like Euphrates is the land between two rivers, which is the Fertile Crescent. Right? Look at the Fertile Crescent. And they're telling you that this is where land originates. So for you to say that it's South America says that the land originated in South America. And that's contradicted in everything that we know is reality. This land here is the land that the Assyrians were given. This is the land that Aram, Haran, the Lebanon, everybody, all of the land that was given to Abraham's Assyrian family was in this land. And they established all of these. All of these borders are all after the fact, primarily established in World War I, after the Ottoman Empire, which ruled from Istanbul up here. But at any rate, this is the land where, remember, Nimrod was over here in Iraq. This is Nimrod's area. And then after they said that, you read here, let's go to Asher. And you get an idea to right? And going to Asher. He said at the beginning of his, and Cush began Nimrod, and he became a mighty one on the earth, and he was a hunter before Yahweh. Therefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahweh, even at the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Iraq. This is where we get Iraq from. Don't let nobody fool you. Akkad, where you get all of the, the Rock and all of his movies, or the Scorpion King. That's all the land of Akkad. And Shinar, that's a land that was primarily wiped out, I think, when the tower was destroyed, or at least a portion of the tower. You got to remember, Shinar and the tower are two different locations. One where they were in each other, but near each other rather, but they aren't the same, because Shinar was the place that Nimrod ruled after the Most High destroyed the tower. Well, anyway, as far as Asher and the Assyrian, he says his land went for Asher, and he built Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calah. And Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, the same as that great city. And Mizraim, which is where we get Egypt from, that's a whole nother issue. But you can see there. Now let's go into where we're going to Jasher, where we'll get into a little bit more of his genealogy. Now the book of Jasher's genealogy is different. You see how in the scriptures we have Genesis 10 is the table of nations, whereas Genesis 10 in the book of Jasher is the same table of nations. And let me go to the chapters. I don't think I have it in this particular PDF, but I'll find it like we always do. Let's pick. Let's go to Shem. Right? Let's go to all of the previous ones. Okay. So this tells you it's not up to that part yet. All right. Okay, well, let's go to chapter 10. I skipped it because I'm going too fast with this search thing. Let's go back to now that I know that's it. 10 is where the table of nations is. All right, now you see it. He says, now the Peleg, the son of Eber, died in those days. And this breaks down, no one breaks down the genealogy like Jasher. Now he tells you here. He says, now these are the sons of Japheth according to their families, and they break down the 7 sons of Japheth, and it tells you where all of their children went. And this is how you know that Jasher's descendants are Gentiles. The children of Gomer, their cities were Frankum, and we know that to be France. So the children of Gomer are the French. Riphath are the Bartanim, who dwell near the Bartona in the river Lida, which empties its waters into the great sea Gihon, that is Oceanus. That would be the Atlantic Ocean. And he says, now the children of Targama are 10 families. The Buzar, the Bulgar, like Bulgaria. Tarki, a lot of these names have changed now, but you can recognize some of them. Tarki, you know what that is, when it Tarsus. You understand that Ungol, where we get Mongolians from. And all of these spread themselves and rested in the north and built themselves cities. Now we're going to get all the way down to the other ones. Meshach, Tyrus, Cushni, Angolis, all of those where that rivers that were Black Sea and Caspian Sea, Javan and Maidai, just the Turkish, and the Iraqis or the Persians. And I wanted to go to where, here we go, Chittim and the Romans. And the Chittim and the Romans, the Chittim, where Alexander the Great come from, and the Greeks ruled from, they are the Ramim, and dwell in the valley of Canacopia by the river Tibru. And the children of the Donovan who dwell in the rivers of the sea, cities of the sea Gihon, and the land of Bordna. We know all of these to be in Europe, particularly the Mediterranean, where their cities or their descendants started their civilizations mostly over there. Well, any rate, we're going to get into where Asher. Go back to where I was with Asher. Sorry about that. These books are so big, when you touch them with your touchscreen, they just move. Because I got a really sensitive touchscreen here, folks, so forgive me. Now, let's find out where he, Asher. Now, you see, okay. The children of Mizraim, blah, 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 blah. All right, now, he said, now some of the children of Shem, son of Noah, the father of children, all of the children of Eber, he's the father of the Hebrews, also went and built themselves cities in places where they were scattered. And everybody was scattered after the tower. That's why the Most High picked up with Abraham and his descendants, because Nimrod caused all of the descendants of Noah to fall on the earth. That's why his name is called Amraphel, because his name means where men fell, caused men to fall. Oh, anyway, it tells you that they built themselves cities. The sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arpachshad, Lud, Aram, and they built them cities and called their names after their cities and after their names. Asher, the son of Shem, and his children and his household went forth at that time, and a very large body of them, and they went to a distant land that they had found. And they had met with a very extensive valley in the land that they were in. And they built themselves for a city, and they called them after their own occurrences. And these are the names of the city which the children of Asher built. And that was Asher, Nineveh, Rezin, Calneh, and Rehoboth, like we read in the other scripture. And the children of Asher dwell there until this day. And the children of Aram also went and built themselves a city. And in the name of Uz, this is where you get Job and all of his descendants. And this is why they mixed up with the Edomites. And he said he rose up And remember the Balaam we were reading about, this is where he comes from. He comes from the land of Asher. This is why all of these narratives are outside of the Cushites and the children of Japheth. The only reason why the children of Japheth are relevant today because Esau has usurped the authority and the birthright of the Gentiles. He runs the Gentiles. And that's another topic for another day as well. But as you can see, that there is no distinguishing who the Gentiles are and who the Hebrews are. All right. And being that Abraham hadn't been given that land yet, that's why Moses don't describe that river Euphrates to the river Egypt yet, because this is all after the Canaanites had took a land. And I'll show you how they got there. It tells you that, see if it's in this one. If this is, that's in Jubilees. So let's go to Jubilees and find out how they got in there in Jubilees. We go back to Jubilees and find out how they got in there, because that land was originally given to Shem. Okay? Now, it says, now Canaan saw, it says, now in the 4th week of the first year, in the beginning thereof, in the 4th and 30th Jubilee, or the 4th and 30th Jubilee, where they dispersed from the land of Shinar. Remember, the Tower of Babel, the Most High destroyed it. And Ham and his sons went into the land which he was supposed to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south. And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. And he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, to the sea. You know what I mean? And that sea was the great Gihon that they were going towards South America. This is the reason why they got on boats, as the Phoenicians and all of the Olmecs and all of them did, and they went to their land. Well, at any rate, he said, Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good, and he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, and he dwelt in the land of Lebanon eastward and westward from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. And Ham, his father, in Cush, and Mizraim, his brother, said to him, you have settled in a land which is not yours, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if you do so, you and your sons will fall in the land and be accursed through sedition. The sedition basically means, crime, stealing, theft, anything that wasn't, the prescribed method, and unlawful. You know what I mean? And anyway, he says, for sedition you have settled, and by sedition your children will fall, and you will be rooted out forever. And the Most High did exactly that. All of the children of Canaan are now in Asia and all of the South America and all of the lands where they're supposed to be. Eskimos, all of the different Indian places, Aboriginal people, all of the different places that they were scattered to, because the Most High rooted them out of that land because they didn't belong there. He said, cursed are you, and cursed shall you be beyond all the sons of Noah, by the curse by which we are bound ourselves by an oath in the presence of the holy judge and in the presence of Noah our father. But he did not listen, and he dwelt in the land of Lebanon from Hamath to the entering of Egypt, he and his sons, until this day. Right? So for this reason, the land is called Canaan. So he's saying that it only was called Canaan because they was there, because they ain't had no business in there. Getting a little excited. Let me calm down. Well, anyway, we could see that, dispel that horrible rumor. Well, at any rate, I wanted to get into a few other things before I go. This is my first video, and I think I've kind of went on. I may have lost track of time a little bit, but I think this is pretty deep as far as our studies, because we wanted to just prove that this was not the land that was given to uh, to the Canaanites. This was our land. And because the Most High uprooted them himself by our hands in terms of the wars and things that our fathers did to root them out of the land, this was paid for by blood. Their blood, mind you, but it's been paid for by blood. But now, when we didn't live up to the covenant we made, the Most High rooted us out, scattered us through the four earths. And we'll look at some of these things to where scattered. Just look at it, all of the different things when it comes to scattered. All right, look at some of the things when it comes to scattered. I mean, let's just look at the prophecies. All right, where that word scattered is. All right, he said in the time of present, every you see the context. He said a nation scattered and peeled. In that time, he said, shall be present. In that time shall the present be brought to Yahweh of hosts of a people scattered and peeled, from a people terrible from their beginning thereto, a nation meted out and trodden underfoot, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to the place the name of Yahweh of hosts, the Mount Zion. So this is us. We're people scattered and peeled. And the noise of the mountain lift up their nations were scattered. Okay, that doesn't relate to us. But we're going to go to some of the scriptures. He says, ye have scattered my flock. He talks about the pastors in that context. And he says, but now we get into the prophecies. He says, I'm with thee, saith Yahweh, to save thee, and make a full end of all nations which I have scattered thee, where I have scattered thee. All right. And the word of Yahweh, O nations, declare to the isles afar, and say ye, he that scattered Israel. So everything tells you that we were scattered, that we're not in the place that we were originally from. And he says, now wherewith the Jews were gathered unto that they should be scattered, and the remnant of Judah perish. That was a rhetorical question. We'll get into that later. And this is another back to ours. Israel is a scattered sheep. All right. And let's keep going. So you get and understand that the context of us scattering is in many testimonies of the prophets, many of them. Ezekiel, he said, Yahweh, I will gather you from the people and assemble you out of the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. This is Ezekiel, so you know this is way after Abraham and after we left Egypt. So these prophecies are dealing with us after we were scattered, talking about our days. All right? And all of his fugitives and all of his bands shall fall by the swords, and then they shall be scattered toward all winds. He's talking about the descendants of Judah at the time that the Most High came in to judge us for the transgressions of forsaking the law. Well, anyway, he says, now I will bring you out from the people. This is Ezekiel 20. And I will gather you out of the countries. He's saying it again. We just read this up here. And I will send you out of the countries. Now we're going to read it again. This is reiteration so you understand that this is serious. He's going to do this. He keep reminding you. It's like the army. You keep drilling it into their mind and having them do it in repetition over and over again to where it becomes second nature. And this is the way it's supposed to be for us. And he says, and he will drive us out of the countries wherein you were scattered with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out. And we'll get into the prophecies later on where you'll understand what he means by that fury, to where no one in the earth is going to know or going to be bewildered or wondering and pondering as to who's behind this. They're going to know the Most High is going to make it apparently clear and abundantly clear that it's him. Well, in anyway, he keep going. He says, and they were scattered because there is no shepherd, and they became meat to all the beasts of the field when they were scattered. This is a reference to the book of Enoch, where the book of Enoch talks about us being scattered, and he used sort of parables or metaphoric references in order to represent us, like we're the sheep and the shepherd, and the beasts are the nations that take and devour us and take over our land and all of that, you know. Well, anyway, And he said, my sheep wandered through all the mountains and upon every hill. Yea, my flock was scattered upon all the face of the earth, and none did search or seek after them. You know what I mean? Really powerful stuff. And he said, and I scattered them. Ezekiel gets into the scattering. So you want to really get into the scattering and to make sure that you understand that this is not the land in which we come from. He said, and I scattered them among the heathen. And when heathen, and let's get into heathen. We'll show you this. I want to show you this in terms of heathen so people get an understanding of what heathen means. Okay? Heathen means, right? Heathen means goyi. All right? Let's go down to see what goyi. It means, apparently from the same root, the back, the person, all right? But it tells you here, a foreign nation, hence a Gentile, a troop of animals, a flight of locusts. And you know what locusts do? Locusts consume. Think about America. 5% of the world's population, but consume 40% of its resources. That's what you're dealing with. So this is what we understand about us. This is why there's stark distinctions between us and their people. But I'm going to stop this here, but I'm going to go into a little bit more of this just to leave you things to ponder as you consider to verify and read some. I encourage you, and I'll go back to my page so you can read some of the posts that I've spelled that wrong. Get my spelling together. Now, this is some of the things that, and I haven't even gotten to the minor prophets, you know, Hosea and Malachi and Joel and all of those. I haven't even gotten to them. These are just the major ones. Now, he talks about here how he's going to gather us. He says, fear not, I will bring thy seed from the east and gather thee from the west. Remember, he showed us everywhere he gathered us. Now he's going to, he scattered us. Now he's going to gather us. He's going to set up an ensign for the nation, shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners. Remember, Judah is the only ones in the four corners. Israel are just outcasts, meaning that they're not living in the land in the borders between the river Nile and the Euphrates. They're down in Africa and up in Turkey and in all of the other places. So they're in their land, but they're scattered out of that land. They're outcast from that land. That's why they're in South America, and they came and got us from West Africa and Ghana and in South Africa and all of those places because we were outside of those borders at that time. Well, at any rate, he says, for a moment I have forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. See, the Most High is reaching out to us to let us know that don't forget about us. He's going to gather us. He said, I will gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come, and they will see my glory. So he's going to gather them too, the ones that survive his judgment, and they're going to come and see him. He's going to show them to everybody. They just ain't going to be in the temple, but they're going to be able to come to Jerusalem where we at. But anyway, let's get into some more. He says, now I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I have driven them, and I will bring them back to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. See that? And here's another one right in Jeremiah again. And I will turn back away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I have driven you. So he always reminds you, they come hand in hand with, yeah, you've been scattered, and you've been gathered, but make no mistake, I'm the one that controlled and orchestrated this. This is judgment for the forsaking of the law and the transgression of the holy covenant. Plain and simple. So he's letting you know that all of this, just as spectacular of a feat it is, he's letting you know that I'm responsible for this. I'm responsible for that great feat of scattering you all over the earth. And I'm going to be responsible for that equally, if not greater, feat of gathering you back to the land I gave to your fathers. And he even gives you a little bit more specificity. Just the reason why I told you earlier that Babylon was such an important part in terms of distinguishing us from the South American captivity. Because you look here, he says, behold, I will bring them forth, or I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the earth. But he puts out the north country first. That's Babylon. He's letting us know that first, that this north country is the one that sticks out, because that's Babylon. They're the ruler of the earth. And I will gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, and the woman with child, and with her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return there. So as many as us we are scattered around the earth, he's saying a great amount of us are going to come back. And behold again, I will gather them out of all countries where I have driven them in mine anger and in my fury and in my great wrath. And I will bring them again unto this place, and I'll cause them to dwell safely. It's an amazing situation here. Can you see that? That's an amazing situation. All right? And he says, and I wanted to find the other one where he says, and I will bring them out from the people and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them to their own land and feed them upon the mountains of Israel by the rivers and in all the inhabited places of the country. And he says in Ezekiel, I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and bring you into your own land. So Isaiah, Jeremiah, and all of them, the major ones, they all say the same thing. Same thing. So there is no ambiguity there, folks. This is the real deal. And I wanted to go in closing. I wanted to go in Revelation. And I wanted to show you, to clear up this ain't our land. This is not our land. The Most High is going to destroy this land. This is Babylon. Right? Come out of my people as in that Babylon. Same way that he telling us that he going to gather us. Well, he's telling you where he gathering us from. And people are wondering why America hasn't really been destroyed, and they haven't really been suffering. And, and if you could see over the last few years, that's not really the case, though, with the fires and the hurricanes and the flooding and all that Most High is set his attention on them. But that's only because of the plagues of the seven angels, or the seven bowls. They're affecting the whole earth, and America is a part of the whole earth. So they're going to be affected by that. In terms of specificity, though, in terms of judgment, you can see in Revelation 18:8, he says, her plague's coming one day, and she'll be utterly burned with fire. That great city, religions aren't a city. Anybody tells you it is delusional. Great city repeats it. Great city, mighty city. In 1 hour is thy judgment come. And remember in Genesis 15, he says that he's going to judge that nation. Well, here we go. He's elaborating on that judgment. And he tells you that this nation, all of the things, remember 40% of the world's resources we consume, only being 5%. But it tells you all of the different stuff that we deal with, because we're the merchants. America, in terms of corporate America, who is really the strength and backbone of America, who make America who they are, the merchants, which are basically an apparatus combining the banking industry and, media. He tells you all of the different things that we sell here. He says, the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn, for no man buyeth her merchandise anymore. Because remember, our import and export trade, that's who we are. We trade with everybody all over the world. That's why trade wars are such a big deal today and all that. But moving on, he says the merchandise of gold, silver, Precious stones, come on, America and the jewelry, forget about it. Pearls, linen, clothing, purple, silk, scarlet, wood, all manners of ivory, most precious wood, brass, iron, marble, the marble tiles and sculptures and artwork, spices, cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, wine, come on, Italian wine and French wines, oil, come on, oil, really, Exxon Mobil, all that. You can take your pick of the oils. Flour, wheat, beast, sheep, horses, chariots or cars, slaves, oh my goodness, and souls of men. When you think about, the oaths and the different kinds of religious fanaticism that goes on here, to where people are willing to die and give their life for different causes. When you're blinded to that degree to where you don't even consider your own life, that means that you primarily lost your soul already, even though you're breathing. And you see that with a lot of these blood oaths you claim that people be hearing and all that, and they say that they're, they own, and it's like that in Christianity. That's why in another post coming up, and we're going to delve into the mark of the beast and how that's Christianity, and we're going to use scripture to prove it. Well, at any rate, we're going to close it here because it talks about that, about the Babylon thing, and I wanted to make one more point about that. It's about the voice of the harpers, musicians, pipers, trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. No more the craftsman, or whatsoever craft he be, shall be found any more in thee. And that's so powerful because America is known for its music. We are the standard of music on the earth. Make no mistake. Primarily because the Hebrews are here. And the Hebrews are here, and our musical ability, we got from just the only tribe that was given that with David and Judah. Judah was used where the prophets were used to speak to the Most High, and the high priest at first, rather. The high priest would translate and convey the messages and convey the word of the Most High to the people. Then when David established Jerusalem, he, through music, spoke to the people. And we know that by the book of Psalms. We can prove that real quick by the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms tells you, let's go to the first ones. We'll find out from the book of Psalms. Let's go to because they start getting into how it works. Here we go. A Psalm of David, so we know where we at. Now here's where it goes into. He says, now to the chief musician, this is Psalms 4, on the Niganoth. The Niganoth is an instrumental music, a stringed instrument, a poem set to music. So it's an epigram. Let me go back to that now. It's an epigram. So an epigram means that it's a music that has been reversed deciphered or reverse engineered, so to speak, to where they play the music and they decipher the language or the words and alphabets, making up a word and a message from the music that David played. The chief musician would extrapolate it from it. You see it. Here's another one. The next one on the Nihaloth is a flute. See it? A Nihaloth, and they call it the Nikaloth, is a flute. Okay? All right. Then we're going to go to the chief musician on the Niganoth again. I don't want to make no jokes about Niganoth. Forgive me, folks. Well, anyway, and he's upon the Shimanoth. And that's an 8-string lyre, which is like a harp. Let me screw that down. It's like an 8-string lyre, which is like a harp. And this is a Psalm of David. So they're saying that he wrote these words that you're reading. He played that on this instrument. And when they were translated or interpreted, this is the message that they gave. And this is revelation knowledge, folks. This is how you get to it. This study tool, like I said, it makes it look very easy because you can really break things down very quickly with this e-sword. But at any rate, going back to that, the original thing, to where our people in that scripture dealing with Revelation 18, you can see that our music is what sets us apart from all other nations. He called us out on our music. Pipers, that's the fluters and the trumpeters. He said, you ain't gonna hear no more of that. And we're known for major orchestras. Every city's got a philharmonic. You know what I mean? R&B, blues, jazz, rock, all being birthed and given to the world by the Americans. American Hebrews and the American Gentiles. So these are the different markers that you could see. Not only that, the wealth. He says, for 1 hour, so great riches has come to naught. Religions aren't known for their wealth. Religions aren't known for their ships and their sailors and as many as trade by the sea. They're not known for that. So these are just to bring you into a clearer understanding of that prophecy from Genesis 15:13 all the way up to Revelation and the culmination of that prophecy. This is going to happen. There's no other way around it. And we can go through Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a witness to it. Remember, everything but 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. And then how are we going to find that? Because we're going to use the daughter, because this is what distinguishes America from, this is what distinguishes America from Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, he says, get thee silent. All right. O daughter of the Chaldeans, lady of the kingdoms, I was wroth with my people, and I have polluted mine inheritance. This is Isaiah. And I've given them into thy hand, and you did show them no mercy. And upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. You're talking about how they treat our old folks, even their own folks. But this is Babylon. And he tells you here, he says, come sit down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. So this is not the same Babylon that he was talking about with Nebuchadnezzar. And it's a virgin because this is the only land, I guess that's the only land, but as it stands historically, America has never had a major war from a foreign invader fought on this soil. So in terms of antiquity, that's a virgin. And this is the reason why he's saying that, and I'm going to get down to it, where he talks about the kings of the Medes and the Persians are going to be the ones who bring that, or break that cherry, so to speak, without sounding vulgar. Well, anyway, that's the reality. Look at what he says here. He says, I was wroth with my people. I read that. And he says, and thou hast said, I shall be a lady forever. Think, lady, liberty. You know what I mean? And thou didst not lay these things to the heart, neither do you remember the latter end of it. He says, therefore now hear this, thou art given the pleasures, and we dwell carelessly for sure. And thou said in your heart, I am, and there's none else beside me. And thou shalt sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. He said, but these 2 things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood, and they shall come up upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of your sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, and thou hast said, none seeth me. And that's the way we looked. We thinking that nobody sees. Nobody see America and the things that they do with the voter stuff and all of the different craziness that we do with our own people supposedly being the model to the world in terms of civility and culture and you know what I mean, and morality. And scripture's telling you that they don't see what you see. They don't see what you're doing, but I see it. He said, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And you know, we're the learning institution. We're the learning institutions. The learning institutions in America are the capital around the world. We're the capital of learning in the earth. And he said, it had perverted thee, and thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and none else beside me. And everybody tell you the American pride. I mean, there's nobody going to be like America. We're America the Great. Nobody's going to be like, we're the greatest country ever lived. He said, therefore shall evil come upon thee, and thou shalt know that and thou shalt not know from when it's rising. Mischief shall fall upon me, and thou shalt not be able to put it off. And he says, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. And stand now with thy enchantments, and with thy multitude of sorceries, which thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit. If so be thou shalt be able to profit. I hate the way this old English language, you know, it's easy to read it, hard to pronounce it. If so be thou able, if so thou mayest prevail. He's saying if you can work all of this stuff out, you're going to prevail. But he's saying you ain't. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. He said, let now the astrologers and stargazers and monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from the things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble. And stubble is like, you know, hay, things that are really flammable. The fire shall burn them, and they shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. And there shall not be a coal to warm it, nor fire to sit before it. And he said, thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants, from thy youth. And they shall wander every one to his quarter, and none shall save thee. So anyway, I'm going to close it there, and I'm going to go back to my page so you can get an idea of where to get a look at. It's G Plus Deon Talley, and you can get a look at all of these different posts, fascinating posts, scriptural references to it, or you can just wait for the videos that I'm going to start doing and getting into a lot of deep stuff. You know, the land of the secrets of Enoch. Just give you an understanding of some of these things. Hebrews can't be Indians. Try to pile a lot of stuff in Atlantis, proving Atlantis from the Book of Jubilees and Jasher, and all really deep stuff. But it wasn't called the Book of the Atlantis. It was called Gihon because the Gihon is the Atlantis. Well, anyway, exposing modern day prophets of Baal, a lot of these camps that have been professing a lot of really blasphemous things, if you want the truth. Ancient Book of Joshua, I break down different articles where we get into, you know, things dealing with the 1619. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more in detail. Edom, who he is, and things like that. And I'll get into that, like I said, at later posts. We're going to delve into that specifically. Esau. Moab, prophecy. People believe in Moab as China, which is just laughable. With all of the scriptures pertaining to them being Ishmaelites, I don't understand it. And not only that, we're going to understand prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you just real quick. They said that when we came out of Egypt rather, there was a mixed multitude with us. Right? There was a mixed multitude with us. And the mixed multitude had a specific name. And we're going to call you, and it means mixed. See, now he says now, and it came to pass when they had heard it and they saw the Lord, they separated from Israel and all the mixed multitude. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds. He's talking about as they left Exodus. This is the book of Exodus. Now we're going to find out what mixed means. Right? Mixed means, see it? This is the Hebrew word for it, Arab. Okay? The web. A mixture, a mongrel race, Arabia. And you hear what the scriptures talk about the mingled people. Arabs are mixed people, and they are. They're a mixture of the children of Hagar and the children of Abraham, the sons of Abraham. Hagar was his mother, and Ishmael was his father. Abraham was Ishmael's father. Those were the progenitors of that race. And that's why, you get a little bit of how mixed, and I hate to compare them to dogs, but every dog that I've had that was of a mixed breed, hard, a little unruly, rambunctious, a little hard to control, can get a little rebellious. That's them. Arrogant. And we'll get into that in detail as well. But anyway, I'm going to close out here because the more I keep closing out, the longer I go. Shalom, folks, and thank you for spending your time with me on this video. And like I said, be sure to look me up on G Plus if you want some good bedtime reading, bedside reading for your instructional enrichment. And wait for my next videos. They'll be coming out fast and furious because I just have so many particular topics that I would like for all of us to explore and come to one complete understanding together on collectively. So I'm going to be getting into those, quite rapidly and succinctly. Well, anyway, I thank you so much for joining me. My name is Dion Tolley, and shalom to all my Hebrew Israelite family. And don't forget, this is for you, provided for you, your gift. But it can only be quiet if you go get it yourself. You can't take it as a gift from another person because it wasn't given to you from them. All of this knowledge is given to you from the Most High. And the only way that he can give it to you is if you obey his voice. And his voice is in the scriptures. So you have to visit his voice through the scriptures to begin your communication. And that's when the Ruach is able, he's a teacher. The Ruach is our teacher. So this is when we enable that connection to be made. And I thank you so much. And hopefully this will be the beginning of that. Shalom, everybody. Have a good evening or morning or whenever you read.